Production support for the weekly special is provided by Smithville, a locally owned business serving central and southern Indiana since 1922, with residential and business internet, voice, and security services. Smithville, local pride, global technology. Information at smithville.net. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
We are out of the studio and on location here on Bloomington's Clear Creek Trail. On tonight's show, we'll head north to Lapel to meet a rustic furniture maker. We'll head south to Starlight to learn about distilled spirits. A story from right here in Bloomington about the creative use of urban lumber, plus much, much more. All stories about wood, right now on the weekly special. Hi, and welcome to the weekly special. I'm Pam Thrash. Tonight we start northeast of Indianapolis in the small town of Lapel, where the weekly special's Joe Wren introduces us to a man who turns found materials into fantastic furniture.
The next time you're driving through rural Indiana, keep your eyes open for a willow. You may not know what you're looking for at first, but once you do, you'll see it everywhere. Hoosier Greg Adams knows what to look for, and he knows what to do with willow when he finds it.
One of the things I started out doing was making wreaths. You can take a piece of willow like this, and just continue adding on to it.
This is a technique Greg discovered nearly 3 decades ago, almost by accident.
I was fishing one day up at the Mississinawa Reservoir back in, must have been 1983, and I had been trimming some rose bushes in my backyard, and I just happened to have a pair of clippers in my back pocket. The fish weren't biting, and I was restless, and I saw some willows growing nearby, and I was attracted by their color, so I cut some of them off, and I took them home, and I thought, well, I'll try to make a basket like the Indians used to do. And I've got it in here somewhere. It looks like a child made it, but it encouraged me to do something with natural materials.
Greg's natural material of choice to this day? Willow, of course.
Willow is a tree that grows in wet areas, around swampy areas, depressions in the middle of fields. And in the Midwest here, it's often cut over. If it was allowed to grow, it would get to be a large tree. If you're going to be a person who makes furniture and you go out and buy a bunch of wood and have to have the machines to machine it, that's quite a big deal. This is very simple, basic, so that's what really appealed to me, the simplicity.
Greg's come a long way from simple wreaths and baskets, but it was that first basket that encouraged him to continue perfecting his craft part-time while working full-time as a social worker.
I thought maybe way off in the distance I would be able to sell it, but right off the bat it was just a matter of personal discovery, you know, just making it for myself.
As it turns out, off in the distance wasn't very far away.
I'm constantly amazed that this turned out so well. When I was a kid, my dad was a master carpenter. He could make a Duncan Fife dresser. All the dresser drawers would fit. No, I can't. The first time I took shop, I got an F. I didn't care about measuring. If I measure something now, it's measured 5 times and cut 6 times. This is very forgiving.
Forgiving, yes. Gravity-defying, no.
When I first got started, I made a chair that was not too much different than this, and the first time I sat in it, it fell back over. And so I had to figure that all out.
But after years of perfecting his technique, that's no longer a concern. The pieces in Greg's Lapel, Indiana shop may look delicate, but they're well-engineered, built for generations to come.
I retired in 2007. I've been working on my craft ever since. Prior to that time, I just did it on the weekends. And I did shows, and it was a major difference to be retired and have the whole day to fill up. I made all this stuff in that time.
And it's a lot of stuff. Greg's Main Street storefront can barely contain all of the tables, chairs, picture frames, and yes, baskets.
I get a lot of people that are envious of me because they think, what, that guy looks like he's having fun. And so sometimes I have to try to conceal how much fun it is. When I go to shows, I usually work while I'm there to show people how I do it. And they say, you know, you're having a great deal of fun. Yeah, I am. They say, well, how can you charge money for that? Well, that's fun too.
Thanks, Joe. If you'd like to see some of Greg's creations, just stop by the store. It's located at 702 Main Street in LaPel. Next up, we travel south to Starlight to learn how wood plays a role in the creation of some award-winning spirits. It's harvest time at Huber's Orchard and Winery, in this case Chardonnay, which will soon be made into one of Huber's award-winning wines. But there's another award-winning line of products being made right here in Starlight, Indiana, distilled spirits. Master distiller Jason Heilingberg gave us a tour.
Last week, these were whole apples pressed into apple juice, and then fermentation took about 7 to 8 days. Now it's hard apple cider, basically, and we're going to get all the good alcohol out of it. The distillation that we're running now is called a stripping run. This is the first distillation. We're just trying to get the spirits, get the alcohol, separate it from the apple wine, and collect it. After this, we'll actually do a second distillation, making a very nice, clean spirit that's ready to go into the barrel after dilution.
Jason describes distilling as a blend of science and art, and these barrels, typically made of American or French oak, are a great example of that.
For instance, here we're distilling apple brandy. This should smell and taste like apple when it comes out of the still. Whenever we put it into the barrel, it's going to give it the oak and vanilla caramel type flavors that the barrel provides. These barrels are toasted, and over the course of time that integration of the oak makes the spirit smoother as well. What begins as a clear spirit after approximately 3 years in the barrel would have a nice amber color to it. And this will actually age for about 2 to 3 more years before we would bottle it.
Like most things for the Hubers, who've been in business for more than a century and a half, they have a history with distilling.
We were distilling and brandies and etc. all the way through the 1800s, all the way to Prohibition. And from Prohibition to 2001, there was really no law in Indiana that would allow us to do what we're doing today.
So in 2001, Huber worked with the state legislature to change that. That same year, Starlight Distillery began production, but it was late in 2004 when their first products became available to consumers.
You're dealing with products that are literally 5 to 6 years after you make them before they're really hitting the market. A lot of our reserve brandies took that long before we first introduced them. So we had all the upfront cost and all the upfront financial layout done years and years ago, long before the products ever came out.
So why do this at all? Why struggle to change laws? Diversification, something the Hubers have been committed to for over 150 years.
One of the key things of our entire success goes back multiple generations, back to 1843 when Simon first started here. He never did one fruit. We always did multiple crops. And as the generations came up, we kept diversifying into different value added and then eventually into retail. The distillery just adds that much more diversity into our overall company.
And Ted's looking for even greater diversity in the future. Along with others in the industry, he's back at the State House this year, pushing a new Indiana craft spirits law. If passed, it would allow others to join Huber in producing not just brandy, but also vodkas, gins, and other distilled spirits.
Under the new law that's written right now, if it passes, we'll have some restrictions that the Indiana population knows when they go to that distillery, that distillery is making those products. not just buying them from somebody else and bottling them under their name. And so when the customers visit that, they have the assurance that those distillers in the back room are making the products that they're drinking in the front room.
For more information about Starlight Distillery and much, much more, head over to huberwinery.com. Bloomington's trail system, like the Clear Creek Trail here, is a jewel for the city and its Parks and Rec Department. But there's another program much less visible that we'd like to tell you about. If ever there was a piece of furniture that was more than the sum of its parts, more than glue, than wood, more than stain, the new reception desk at the Waldron Arts Center in Bloomington would be that piece. But the process of pulling those parts together began more than a year ago, when the Waldron's artistic director Paul Daly approached Bloomington woodworker Nancy Hiller with a need.
The desk was designed to accommodate 2 people, and in fact its commissioning was necessitated by the Waldrons having obtained a camera system and hired a guard to be on the premises, I believe, at all times when the building is open. Because I make an effort to use locally produced wood when feasible, it occurred to me that since this was quite a public institutional project, I should contact Lee at the city and find out whether they had any quarter sawn oak available that would work for this desk.
Lee is Lee Huss, Bloomington's urban forester. Among other things, he manages a program, affectionately referred to as Leave No Log Behind, that works to connect local woodworkers with local materials.
We had previously worked with Nancy Hiller on some other projects and such, and she expressed interest in mentioning of this desk at the Waldron. We felt very good that this urban wood was going back into what was essentially the City Hall at one time.
But in this case, it wasn't just any urban wood. The storms that ripped through Monroe County in the spring of 2011 brought down dozens of trees, 11 in Seminary Square Park alone. One of those trees was an 85-year-old red oak, which when milled and masterfully finished by Hiller, became the countertop for the Waldron desk.
I think that the city's program is a fantastic and an enterprising, progressive program that more municipalities should be emulating. I think it just shows real leadership on the part of the City of Bloomington Parks and Recreation Department that they're doing this. This results in making what would otherwise go to waste usable.
If you go to our parks office and some of our other facilities, you will see some of these tables and some other items made. And then here with this red oak, we're in the process of wanting to have some clocks made and have those available to the public.
I think a lot of people are very excited by the idea that they can see a piece of furniture or any other thing, whether it be a house or a dress or whatever, some made object that was made by someone they know out of material that grew right in their backyard. Our culture, especially during the 20th century, has become so disconnected from how things are grown and made that a lot of us feel like little kids, I think, when we actually have a chance to see things, see how tangibly direct things can be that are locally made. It's quite thrilling.
You can head down to the Waldron to see Nancy's latest creation, and if you'd like more, you can find her work at nrhillerdesign.com. Up next, weekly special contributing producer Ann Shea explores the game of hurling and introduces us to a Bloomington man who's become the only maker of hurleys in the United States.
Stephen Quigley's love of the ancient Irish sport of hurling began when he did some teaching in that country years ago.
I was just amazed at the skill and also the really the bravery of these little kids. They were just middle school kids with these big sticks, and they were making this loud clash of the ash is what it's called when two Hurleys are struck together. Just that sound, the first time I heard it, I just fell in love with it.
He tried to find a place to play when he got back to Indiana, so he joined the Indianapolis Hurling Club and plays in events such as the Bloomington Irish Festival.
Best way to describe hurling is field hockey with an option to play the game in the air. You can run with the ball in your hand for a little bit. You can run with it on your stick as long as you want until somebody knocks it off. You can strike it like you do a baseball. Usually when I'm trying to recruit a baseball player, I'll say it's kind of like home run derby, but somebody's chasing you with a stick.
Because it was somewhat difficult to get the sticks, or hurleys as they're called, to play the game, Stephen started making them.
The club that I play for up in Indianapolis started bringing them in from Ireland, and sometimes there'd be shortages, and whenever there was a shortage, I was kind of expected to fill the gap. So that gap, I've just been steadily making more and more.
Now Stephen makes about 1,000 hurleys a year for his own business, American Hurling Company, based in Bloomington. He learned the basic skills in Ireland, and it all begins with a tree.
That tree has to be cut out in a certain way, and has to be sawn up in a certain way. Once the wood is ready to work, it's shaped out with the bandsaw.
Then a variety of tools are used to give it its unique style.
One of the things that's very important, the hurley, is the neck of the hurl here. It has to be thinned down just enough so that it gives it spring. So if you don't have a springy hurley, you're not going to get a big enough hit off the ball. And then once that happens, it goes to the sander, and its profile is further perfected and shaped. Then it's ready to be stamped and sent off to the customer.
Stephen mainly fills online orders, and right now he owns the only hurley business in the United States. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have competition.
I'm in competition with everyone in Ireland, and that's something that people don't understand.
There are about 120 hurley makers in Ireland, and people in the States usually have their product shipped in or carry them into country in their luggage. But despite that, Stephen's business is catching on.
I'll have somebody who will call me up and say, I want a star hurley from Kilkenny, and I need it, in 2 days, and or I need something overnight. We've had to send some sticks to Hollywood for different things and for photo shoots here and there. So I get a lot of those types of requests where it's something custom. It has to be fast, and it has to be exactly right.
And he has some built-in business insurance when it comes to repair work.
Well, the only guarantee a hurley maker is ever going to give anybody who buys a hurley is that it's going to get broken.
But when that happens, it just has everything to do with the way you play.
There you go, there you go.
Thanks, Ann. If you'd like to take a look at some of Stephen's hurleys or just learn more about the sport of hurling, go to the website at AmericanHurling.com. And now we're headed high into the trees of Brown County. Contributing producer Stan Yastrzebski has the story.
When Gary Bartels inherited about 500 acres of land in Brown County, he knew the land was equal parts risk and opportunity. He and his wife could retire early, or he and his sons Chris and Lance could pay the hefty property taxes and slowly reinvest in the property. So Bartels put the choice to his kids.
We said, this is a choice, guys. We can subdivide the property and sell it all off, and you guys can fend for yourself. Or I'm thinking about building an adventure retreat. If you're interested in doing this, then you can help me build it, and then someday you'll probably inherit it. But that means you have to commit to working weekends and working during the summer. It's your choice. You get 2 weeks.
In less than the allotted fortnight, the boys decided to keep the land and give up their free time to develop it. 13 years later, the Valley Branch Retreat has been built up, including the addition of paintball fields, mountain bike trails, and now zip lines through the tree canopy. Brown County tourism officials have no trouble getting visitors to come tour the brightly colored trees each fall. It's the busiest time of the year for the area. But until recently, there wasn't much opportunity to see them like this.
That was 440 feet of zip line. There are 9 zip lines in this park, which is about 500 acres. And on this one, you can actually race with a friend of yours if you want to.
The installation of the zip lines could create as many as 30 jobs in the coming months. Many of those will be 20-something guides, either fresh out of college or taking a break from it, who teach riders how to use the zip lines. What's a zip line, you ask? Basically, it's a steel cable suspended between 2 fixed points, usually a few dozen feet up a couple trees, which people ride along using a contraption which looks like a pair of pulleys and a set of handlebars. Attach the apparatus to the line, get the go-ahead from each of the 2 guides shepherding the group through the high wire act.
Brake set, line clear.
Zipping. And you're off.
And go!
Gary Bartels spent much of his career as an engineer for auto parts manufacturer Arvin Meritor and now uses many of those skills at the ranch, but he can't say how much of his own money he's spent installing the zip lines. The costs all blend into more than a decade of adding amenities to the land. But Bartels acknowledges he's taking a sizable financial risk in a time where pennies are still being pinched.
I'm the maintenance guy, I'm the promoter, I'm the accountant, I'm even a ref, or maybe eventually a guide. So my time is, I put a lot of hours in, a lot more hours than I put it working for Arvin. It became clear to me that if I was gone, it would take 2 people to replace me. And looking at the amount of revenues generated, it could be a struggle for my 2 sons to keep this afloat without selling it.
Bartels should get some help from Brown County officials. He says he's wary that Midwesterners looking for a cheap staycation may not gravitate to ziplining, but Brown County Economic Development Commission President Tom Bornholt says it's a step toward a change in the overall climate in a county known more for antiquing than for adrenaline rushes.
You don't typically think of Indiana as an adventure state, so this is a great opportunity for us to start to create that atmosphere of here's an opportunity for an adventure in Indiana.
Bartels acknowledges his goal of 30 new jobs could be up a tree if business doesn't take off. But if the investment of this one small business owner does bear fruit, the area at large may benefit from the new clientele Bartels brings in. Brown County Convention and Visitors Bureau Executive Director Jane Ellis says previous forays into adventure tourism have exhibited the kind of multiplier effect which gives economic development officials the same kind of adrenaline rush they might get from the new zip lines.
It's also raised an awareness for us here in Brown County of some of the things that we may lack, particularly the mountain bikers were looking for, was a brewery, a brew pub. Through that, some people got together and we now have a brew pub.
It's still up in the air whether the economy will create stress or relieve it for Gary Bartels, who's left to wonder for the moment whether he will recoup his investment.
There was times that during the build it was very difficult. So this was like, I needed this stress relief. I felt so much better after zipping and having that experience. I said, yes, this is what people need.
That's a relief the tourism-heavy Brown County economy hopes it gets to feel, too. Reporting for the Weekly Special, I'm Stan Jastrzebski.
Oh my God, that is awesome.
Thanks, Stan. For more information about zipline adventures in Brown County, visit valleybranchretreat.net. A while back, producer Greg Parker paid a visit to a group of model train enthusiasts, a group that works with metal, plastic, and yes, wood.
I've been working on this layout for, I think it's like 20 years now. I started about 2 years after we built the house. Made sure that the house had a good basement in it so I could put my trains in it. There's much more to model railroading than you think there is. A lot of us like to strive for a kind of a realistic environment for the trains to run through and have a reason for the trains to be where they are. We have timetables, we have switch lists, we have what we call car cards or waybills. We just try to make it as realistic as possible in terms of operating a railroad. And now I'm going to just take everything that I learned from this one and apply it to the next one and hopefully come up with something that's better than this one. My biggest regret is that I have to get this one out of the way before I can start the new one, I guess, and that's a big job in itself.
It's hard to imagine that his work of 20 years will simply disappear, but then model railroaders seem to enjoy an engineering challenge and the quest for a more perfect layout.
You know, I love to go out and chase the real thing and wait at a grade crossing for 2 hours for one to show up, and that's pretty dedicated, but it's been a great hobby over the years. I'd recommend it to anybody.
If you're interested in model railroading or simply want to know more about it, check out the website of the National Model Railroad Association. And that will do it for tonight's show. We'd like to remind everyone to visit our website at theweeklyspecial.org, where you can watch video from past episodes and see what's coming up next week. Plus, you can link to our Facebook page, where a community of viewers awaits. You can get show news, link to all our guests, and see behind-the-scenes photos and videos. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Production support for the weekly special is provided by Smithville, a locally owned business serving central and southern Indiana since 1922, with residential and business internet, voice, and security services. Smithville, local pride, global technology. Information at smithville.net. And by WTIU members. Thank you.